We were going to have our daughters scream across the stage to open this up, but decided that we would instead turn to a different part of the world where little kids do scream around, but in not as much an organized way, and that is in sub-Saharan Africa. Put yourselves in the shoes of this farmer. He's in northern Uganda. He's got a small field. He's got some corn, tomatoes, maybe he has a cow in back. Ignacio this morning spoke eloquently about savings, and that is their savings. They have a cow. What happens when they have a problem with their crop? What happens when their cow is sick? Well, there are agricultural extension workers who might pass once a year. They can rely on their neighbors, but if they haven't witnessed this or known how to treat it in the past, they're really stuck. Anyone in this room in that situation might say, well, I'll go to a computer. I'll do some Googling, find the answer, and address the needs of the wilting corn, of the spots on the tomatoes, of the sick cow. But you know what? This guy's never seen a computer. In fact, all he has to rely on to get information is probably radio, which is untargeted, doesn't really address his needs. Maybe a TV in a local town, same issue. Newspapers come through occasionally, not in his local language, not useful. Or how about these women? Put yourselves in their shoes. You're in the Upper East region of Ghana. The clinic where they're sitting, well, the door's closed. Can't get much information. You're pregnant. You have lots of things happening that you've never experienced before. Have no idea where to turn to. Baby center, forget it. No way to access it. WebMD, not a chance. Computers, nope, not there. Radio, not helpful. It's about information poverty. And how do you get information into the hands of the poor? These are two examples of how people benefit from information. We all, all the people with their computers and phones and access right here is immense. Think about people in sub-Saharan Africa or other places in the world where there are big gaps. It's hard to access information. In fact, it's disproportionately harder for those who would benefit most from having access to information. It becomes interesting when you look at mobile phones. The mobile phone today has the potential to level the playing field in terms of information access. Let me show you some numbers, or some numbers in the form of a map of the world. The darker the blue, the better penetration of mobile phones. This is 2001. Look at how the world changes over time. Pretty dramatic. Let's go back again. 2001, 2004, 2008. In 2010, we're going to surpass 5 billion mobile phones globally. 5 billion. What's even more striking is that 4 billion of those phones are in developing countries. And when you think about how a phone is used in a developing country, there's one in a household. Everyone uses it. So that number is actually even larger. We're reaching, or have the potential to reach, a tremendous number of people, a very large percentage of the global population, through mobile phones that are in people's hands today. When you go the next step and look at sub-Saharan Africa in particular, an amazing statistic in my mind is you look at penetration rates and growth in penetration rates of phones. And Africa, sub-Saharan Africa in particular, is growing at a rate that's 4 times that of the rest of the world. Phones are increasingly in people's hands, and they're able to increasingly leverage those phones to do things more than just talking. But that's the big question now. So people have always used the phone, held it up to the ear. What does it take to get people to go from their ear to hold the phone in their hands and look at the phone and access information on the phone? At Grameen Foundation, our mission is to empower the poor, especially the poorest, to create a world without poverty. We started a dozen years ago looking at microfinance and still work with microfinance institutions around the world to extend their reach and impact. We saw early on that technology plays a vital role in microfinance, and about 6 years ago started working in Uganda with MTN, which is a mobile operator that is present in over 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, to take a village phone program that some people may be familiar with, originally from Bangladesh. We replicated it in Uganda. The model is quite simple. Take a micro-entrepreneur in a village, already in the village, takes out a small loan to have a phone. Today, a phone will cost $10 to $12 for a new phone in Uganda. In that era, it was about $100, and this is 6 years ago now. for a phone. They're off the grid, both the power grid and the reach of a mobile operator. So we give them a car battery. We don't give them, it's included in the loan, a car battery to charge the loan. They have a directional antenna so that they could double the distance of a typical signal of a mobile operator. They now have a vibrant business of providing communication services in their villages. Over 3 years, working with MTN, we built out a network of over 25,000 village phone operators. These are trusted intermediaries providing voice services in their communities. We took a step back and said, wow, 25,000 community people local in their community. Think about what we can do with this platform to really go to the next step, and that is putting the phone in their hands and looking at their phone for information services. And that's when we started working closely with Google. Who better than the company focused on organizing the world's information and putting that information within the reach of people around the world to innovate around information access. So Grameen, together with MTN and Google, the three of us, and local partners. Local context is crucially important in health, in agriculture, the areas where people's needs are most acute. We had local partners to help us to develop content, to understand local context deeply so we can develop services that meet their needs. So what does this look like in practice? Well, we start with the phones that are in people's hands. Those 4 billion phones, almost all of them have 12 keys. I bet no one in this room has a phone with 12 keys on it. In Uganda, everyone has a phone with 12 keys on it. Very few have any kind of high-end device. We take a rigorous approach to testing and learning and iterating and improving in the field, and we do it in the field. We have an office in Kampala, but it's really out in the places where people live, where the smallholder farmers live, where people have most acute health needs that we focus our work. And we take a structured approach to this. We begin with assessing what the information needs are. We've done detailed ethnographic work and needs assessment work, understanding in detail where the gaps in information services are and how the information flows work today. That includes economic and information flows. How do people get market prices? How do they know how to bulk their products today to get them to market and get a higher price for their products? And understanding what beyond radio do they do? Radio, TV, newspapers. What do they do today on phones? We then define sources of information that enable us to pull everything together to get the information out to people that is relevant and actionable and useful. And then we get to the real fun part, and that's doing the prototyping and testing and piloting in the field.
Thank you. So I'll talk a little bit about rapid prototyping and piloting. I wanted to say that just about every product decision that was made in this partnership was based on extensive user research. The whole idea was design something, get it out in the field, see how people use it or not, learn from that, build what you learned into the product, get it out there again. So we worked out the kinks in the product out in the field. And to give you an idea of how much piloting and prototyping we did, we conducted 10 pilots that reached at least 8,000 people and generated over 54,000 queries in a period of months. I want to talk a little bit about a particular rapid prototyping exercise that we did. This was when we had zeroed in on a couple of potential applications that people seem to want, need, and value: health, agriculture, and weather. So at this point, our goal here was to try and understand what is the entire user experience when they first learn about this service, if we were to make a mobile service offering health information, for example. From initial awareness, when they learn about the service, generally users have questions, from when they actually start entering a query via SMS, how they respond to the answer that they get from Google SMS tips. So we sent a team of 3 teams of 3 people each out all over Uganda, 17 locations, both urban and rural. In 4 days, they collected 300, almost 300 queries. And what they did was they would approach somebody in places where people gather, so the local market, the local transportation hub, hospitals, and say to the person, hey, if you could ask any health question or any agriculture question through your mobile phone, what would you ask? And we had set up a long code, and the user who was approached, if he or she had their own phone, could send the question through their phone, or if they didn't, you know, we would show them how to text, they could use our phones. And the query that was entered was redirected to our offices, to computers in our offices, where we had an agriculture expert, a health expert, and somebody who had access to the weather forecast, manually answering those questions. And then they would go back, and our team would observe how people reacted to the responses and all that. So this is one typical question, very conversational. I want to know when the rain comes in the week. Here's another one. Malaria prevention. This is a little unusual in that this particular user understood keywords. Not always the case in Africa. Banana weevils wilting plant. Now here's a much more typical question. This service is available in English and Luganda, which is the local language in Uganda. This is a question on health because you can see the person's asking about condoms. It's a very long question. I don't know exactly what they're saying, but what we saw was people would either ask very short queries like malaria or HIV, or they would ask very long queries because in Africa, you introduce yourself to somebody, you say, I'm Agnes, I'm 32, I'm a mother of two, and then you launch into your question. So what we learned from the rapid prototyping validated that mobile is indeed a compelling delivery channel, mostly because it's private. You can ask questions that other people may not see. You get a very quick response. Instant gratification is as important to people in Africa as it is to us in the West. It's low cost relative to the alternative. So the user doesn't have to walk miles to a clinic or doesn't have to wait till his or her agriculture worker shows up for their monthly visit. They're getting the information directly from the source. And because we partnered with MTN, MTN's brand was very well known out there. And so they felt like they could trust the information. So that's what we ended up launching in Uganda. Google SMS tips that had sexual and reproductive health information. Google SMS agriculture tips that had pest control and disease management information. We had a clinic finder, which was a clinic directory. And then we offered weather forecast. These are some of the pieces of collateral that were prepared for the launch. Now, print collateral reaches a very narrow segment of the population. To reach a wider number, particularly rural poor, we had radio ads, we had direct marketing, we had SMS blasts, et cetera. But I wanted to give you an idea of the messaging behind these services. Okay, enough of all this talk. I'm sure you're curious to know how the service works, so we have a short demo for you. They didn't have the setup for us to show it to you on a mobile phone, so we're going to show it to you on a web simulator that we prepared. These are actual queries that people use. The first one, malaria treatment. Notice the misspelling of treatment. And here's the answer. What we try to do is we describe the disease, or we define it, and then we assume when somebody's asking about malaria, it's because they're worried they have it, they might have it, somebody they know has it. So we tell them, if you can click to number 2, Scott, we tell them how you get it, and number 3, signs and symptoms. And then we give attribution to make clear that the information isn't coming from Google, it's coming from a local organization. This is very hard to do, by the way, providing an accurate result to an SMS search query. On the web, you can type in a query, and we give you pages of results, and the user can just browse through and figure out which one is the most relevant. With SMS, the user is limited to 140 characters for their query, and we get one chance to return the right answer. As you can see, we made the service a little more verbose. It's very hard to give accurate information on a complex topic like health or agriculture in 140 characters. So we would return up to 5 SMS's worth of information. Let's go to the second. OK, so that query, which you can't see, basically is an actual user query. Does painting and enlargement of breasts occur in early pregnancy? This is one of the really innovative things that we did with the service. To the best of my knowledge, it's the only SMS service that lets users enter information and ask a question in free-form text entry, the way you would ask your friend a question. Most SMS-based information services are either menu-driven, or you have to adhere to a very rigorous syntax. You can see the answer here. Can we go to the third page, please? OK, and here's the second innovation. We give the user a chance to double-click. If they find the answer interesting and they want to find out more, it raises more questions, and generally this happens. They can reply 1 for advice on how to cope with pain from breastfeeding. Scott, do you want to go to number 4, page 4? 2 for pregnancy tests, and 3 on how to check for breast cancer. So let's select number 1. You just go back to the query box and wipe that out and just hit type in 1. OK. A woman sometimes produces more milk than her baby needs, so we explain why your breast might be larger and might hurt. The third query, let's just give people an example of the third query. What is the relationship between TB and HIV/AIDS? Again, free-form text entry. Yeah, that's good. Again, I won't read it out to you, but you can get a sense of. And a little bit of explaining what people might expect if they go to a clinic. So this is all, it's not a perfect service by any stretch of the imagination, very difficult to do. Why don't we take a couple of queries from the audience? Anybody want to ask a question? Remember, this was originally built for sexual and reproductive health, so that's where we're strongest in.
What percentage in your pilot press got as far as 3 or 4? Like, how far did people penetrate in the information?
Oh, well, you can only go 1 level down. What I meant was, does anybody want to try and ask a question that we can enter into the simulator and see the answers?
Transmit AIDS.
Transmit AIDS. Scott, can you type that? OK, let's see if it works. Wow, great. What a cool service. OK, so what did we learn from all of this, and what pearls of wisdom are we going to share? David? So the first thing we learned is, and this is weird coming from a Googler, but technology is not the be-all and the end-all. It is the starting point. You can build the best technical service, but if people don't know about it, they don't know how to use it, they don't know where to find it, they don't know what value it adds to their day-to-day lives, it's not going to succeed.
All right. Second is, it's not just going to the user, but it's staying with the user. It's really understanding the life of and the needs of the people who we're working with. It's understanding the cultural sensitivities of how you convey information so that it's effective and used. It's also about learning from the user. Some of the most innovative ideas and practices come from the people we work with. And sitting around a conference table in Mountain View or Seattle, you don't get that learning. You get it by being in the field in Uganda or wherever you're working to be disseminating information.
Fail fast. If you're going to screw up early, screw up often. Build everything you've learned from screwing up back into the system. And that's essentially what we did. We built prototypes. We went out there, and instead of sitting around a conference room trying to hypothesize how people might use the service or not, we actually learned from actual behavior. So the best predictor of future behavior is behavior, like actual behavior. So, and we did this over and over again. So it's sort of rinse, wash, repeat.
Lastly, if they can't find it, they're not going to use it. This is about 2 things, about discoverability and usability. Discoverability, how do you know the service is out there? One of the most effective tools we had was all these people, no one has subscription services, right? You don't pay anything on a monthly basis. You pay for your usage. You add time to your phone, you get a message back that says, thank you, you just added 10,000 shillings to your phone. Uses about 30 to 40 characters. You got another 100 there where you can append a message that says, would you like to learn more about agriculture or health, or do you have questions about sexual reproductive health? Very effective channel to make a service discoverable. Now, how about making it usable? It's great that they know it, but how do you know, for example, to drill down that the 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end means you can go into basically the tree of information that we've developed. There's a role for trusted intermediaries. It's a person in the local community, be it a village phone operator or any other type of local trusted person, knows how to use the phone and can be the evangelist in the community for having access to information. Think about them as the community librarian who has this device in their hands that is opening a wealth of information to them and to their local community. To roll it all up, I come back to this number, 4 billion phones, developing countries, big number. 12 keys on those phones. Innovation in information access is all about designing solutions that meet local needs, be they agriculture needs, health needs, other needs, the core needs of people in a community. What we've seen in our work in Uganda together is that this is barely the tip of the iceberg. There's huge potential to use the phones that are in people's hands today to overcome information poverty. And we're really excited about the potential of lots of other efforts in the field today to overcome information poverty using the phones that are out there. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks.